This is Doug King. He is a director of cyber and InfoSec over at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. Doug, I know we've got some new users on here, so if you wouldn't mind just giving a brief intro again.
Sure. My name is Doug King. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity and Information Security Officer at Rappahannock Electric Cooperative. We are a electric utility. We're a not-for-profit electric utility. We serve 22 counties right outside of Washington, D.C. and Virginia. We have about 170,000 member owners. So our customers are actually part of the cooperative, so they're owners as well. We run 24/7 security operations here. That's essentially our mission, to deliver safe and reliable, affordable electricity.
Yeah, Doug's fairly instrumental on the Eastern Seaboard from a infrastructural perspective. So he relies on Automox every day to just make sure that things aren't getting torn down on his behalf.
Yeah, it's a little different when you've got, a lot of bad guys around the world wanting you to see you fail. So glad to be on the panel today. Glad to discuss it.
And for those of you that weren't on last session, we kind of talked, Doug's onboarding process, what's working for him, what goals he has moving forward. This is going to be a more feature heavy session. Just questions to probe into what he'd like to see, what's working currently, and what he values in the product from a specific perspective. So I'm going to jump right into these questions for you, Doug.
Right.
So from a platform angle, what is the most valuable feature that you guys have over there running at Rappahannock? What could you not live without, in other words?
As far as Automox is concerned?
Yeah.
Just Automox?
Just okay. Automox.
Just Automox.
We can talk about other things too.
Oh, we can talk about other things, right? No, just as far as Automox, I would say is the speed at which it operates. That's something. That's, to me, that's a kind of a baked-in feature. From the moment we deploy an agent through automation, that agent reports in within just a few seconds. And just a few seconds after that, we assign it to groups and we assign a policy to it. And that policy basically says that you're in this group based upon, the attributes of that endpoint. So whether it be an operating system or whatever we might set. And here is the policy that you have. We can start managing that product almost immediately. We have about 500 people here or so that support the electric cooperative in this mission. We are critical infrastructure, so we're kind of the building blocks of modern civilization. There's a gentleman I worked with in the past that told me that there's about 9 days between when people lose things like electricity, clean water, things like that. There's about 9 days till the very fabric of society starts tearing itself apart. So for us, taking care of our assets, whether they be a line truck or whether they be a client that's sitting on someone's desk or in someone's truck, they're all critical. And I would say the Automox, the way the agent works, the way it rapidly assesses that endpoint and says, hey, here's the patches and I'm going to apply them based upon your policy, is just reliably as it does it is huge for us. It works really well. I haven't encountered a point where the product has let me down. I've seen some issues where, that it's really the third party product, the software that's being patched, but Automox was doing exactly what it was supposed to. So I would say the efficiency, quick to get the agent deployed, quick to communicate, and reliability of it as well. It's no interruptions that we've had.
Yeah, that's just the bread and butter. That's everything else is just gravy after that. And I know we talk about feature updates, things that we're working on moving forward. For those of you that don't already know, we have a product roadmap webinar series that takes place the third Wednesday of each month. So just past that last week, we've got one, I think it's June 21st, and that'd be at noon Eastern. So whenever you want to find anything new, Doug, I know you attend those whenever you can. So
And honestly too, I mean, being in a leadership position, I have to status out, you know, our readiness. Some of the new features, I love the way the direction of the reporting and the dashboard is going. It's getting more of a enterprise type view. It's giving me a breakdown of the type of agents, the breakdown of the type of issues. It's showing me my outliers. I really like the direction it's going as far as some of the newer things I'm seeing on the roadmap. The custom messaging for the employees, what they see at their endpoint when Automox kicks off a patching cycle that may or may not require a reboot. I love the direction that you guys have put on the roadmap, and I think it's really moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I know our product team's working really hard. Always willing to get on calls with prospects and customers alike to tell them what's going on and just hear their feedback. So, yeah, and we talked about your team, your admin team over there at Rappahannock on this last session.
Yep.
For adoption, was there a specific feature or aspect of Automox that kind of, you know, kicked that for them, made them want to use the product more than be reluctant to do so after WSUS?
You know, I think, you know, yeah, we were a WSUS shop, right? And we talked about that in the last session. I think the big thing for us is that they were skeptical. Because my team, we evaluated from a security operations standpoint. It's like, hey, how do we get maximum coverage? How do we get maximum compliance on our endpoints, right? And fall well within our SLAs. When we worked with Automox, we did the proof of concept for us. We had our demonstration running. We were happy with it. This is definitely the right direction. When we approached the second half of our brain, so to speak, the IT operations, they had been entrenched in really the WSUS world and maybe some third-party patch management tools that were very labor intensive. When we approached them and said, hey, here's this really small agent that patches not just operating system, but a ton of third-party products. All you have to do is install it and set a policy and you're pretty much done. They're a little skeptical, right? And we, you know, there's products that kind of dabble in third-party, you know, or management, and there's products that do it really well. I'm glad to see this product does it really well. Once they actually start to see it and they actually said, hey, I set a policy and actually did what it was going to say, and now there's 0 pending updates, they were all on board. So when they're, again, and this is something I shared in the last session, was as an administrator, I mean, we're all paid problem solvers, right? That's what we do in IT and security. We solve problems, whether it be small problems or big problems. We solve problems, generally speaking. When I'm able to tell them that, you know, your days of intensive labor around patch manager are kind of over, and maybe you have to deal with an outlier every once in a while, that was huge, because there are, you know, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort in. You know, when Microsoft gives a patch Tuesday, and it's one of the large patch Tuesdays, or Microsoft sends out an out-of-bound emergency update, usually there was a feeling of dread because people are like, yes, I'm working this weekend. Well, maybe that's the case, but you're going to be very comfortable if you do find yourself in that position because of the product, Automox, and how it's working. So again, the adoption rate is really high. We don't hear a lot of, actually, we've heard really nothing negative about it. Most of it is just set and forget it, and they've moved on to other things that they want to focus on. So we see it as kind of a part of our security fabric here, right, to help us maintain the health of our endpoints.
And it just helps with that reallocation of time, you know, time better spent doing things that are more beneficial to Rappahannock, better for the security of your company, and, you know, if there are other projects that they need working on.
Yep. And like I said, you know, patch management, it's an unsexy thing that we all have to do, right? It's basic blocking and tackling. There's not a lot of reward in that. So if there's not a lot of reward in that, you know, as far as, you know, intellectual stimulation, then let's automate it as much as possible. And so it's very repeatable, and the output is very, you know, expected each and every time. So it's working
consistent process. That's
consistent process.
Yeah. Like I said, bread and butter. Everything else at this point is just a gravy feature. But we're, you know, excited to be providing those to you guys, and whatever feedback you guys might have on the product itself. So Yeah, thanks for that, Doug. I know teams are often, reluctant to adopt new products, and the way that your team has implemented it, and more or less just set and forgotten about it. It's boded you well. So
yeah, glad to. I have a couple interns here this summer, and
nice.
One of the things I've tasked them with from a security operations standpoint is find the endpoints which do not, for whatever reason, have automocks, or the agent hasn't reported in for whatever reason. So they're kind of like my automocks bloodhounds at this point. They're going out and finding every possible thing we could put it on, and it's been working really well for us. So appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a fun product to put in the hands of an intern. I feel like, the tenacity of an intern is a little bit more than most positions that are, longer tenured people. So that's cool to see.
Yeah, the UI, and like I said, the UI and it's very simple for someone new to the team to understand. Agents report in, agents get applied to groups, policies get applied to groups. It's very, very straightforward. You do not have to go to, 2 or 3 week training session to learn how to use this product. It was very, very intuitive for people new to the team.
And speaking of something that is or was not quite as intuitive, being made a little bit more intuitive with the help of one of our resident PowerShell and Bash experts over here. His name's John Garasino. He's been going crazy in the worklet catalog. I know you mentioned that, Doug.
Yeah.
Can you speak to worklets and how they've benefited your organization and what your process looks like?
So for you that aren't aware, the worklets are kind of like the Swiss or utility knife, Swiss Army utility knife when it comes to getting other things done. There is a treasure trove of really prescriptive problem solvers called a worklet that John and others have worked on over the last couple of years, and those allow you to knock out things that really don't fall into the world of patch management. Maybe it's something like more of a utilitarian thing, like find a BIOS update, or maybe it's something more of like, hey, remotely wipe a device if you have to. So yeah, hats off to the team over at AutoMox who continue to put a lot of time and energy in those worklets. The platform is really based on scripting, right? The agent is really a really powerful scripting endpoint. Knowing that, I'm glad that AutoMox has put some time into in that worklet catalog, because it allows the people to do things that are unexpected in a good way. So if you have I would say this to anyone: if you have a very unique endpoint requirement, let's say a piece of software has to be deployed a particular way, or maybe there's a firmware version, or maybe there's a mitigation. I know Microsoft sometimes puts out, hey, we don't have a patch for this, but here's a security mitigation you can do. Here's a registry change. You can do it in a worklet. So again, because the world has changed over the last couple of years and people working more remotely than ever, those traditional tools really don't fit those types of scenarios. So the worklet catalog has been extremely good for us. And every time we log in, we always look to see what new worklets John and others have put into it.
Yeah, and worklets are definitely a core functionality of AutoMox, but it still feels like a back room that people aren't accessing it as much as they should be, or they just don't even know that it exists, or they don't feel like they have the coding wherewithal to do it themselves. And now you really don't have to lean on that as much now that we're building out the worklet catalog to the extent that it should be. So excited to be empowering people in that way.
There's a workload in there that can help almost anyone, as far as I'm concerned. There's something in there that someone's going to have a good time with.
Yeah, no, there are some powerful ones in there. I know we were just talking about that earlier. In terms of other features, worklets is one of them, obviously, but ones that you want to see. Are there any that are top of mind? I know you mentioned the reporting is what it needs to be for you guys. Is there anything that you'd see as a scalable asset?
I do think, and I don't know if there's a workload out there for it, but I do think there's some diagnostic worklets that could probably be explored, where if I have a security analyst and they're trying to gather information about an endpoint, That would be interesting. We basically dump, hey, give me the latest security logs, give me the latest status of the EDR client, or kind of roll it all up into one kind of report. That would be something I'd want someone on my security team to kind of have. Kind of a, what is the state of this endpoint? And here's a little file that you can pick up and kind of view very, very quickly. Those would be kind of interesting, kind of a roll up of awareness around that endpoint. I think that would be kind of an interesting one to kind of take a look at. And I'm honestly, because of I'm sure John Garrison could probably knock it out in a couple minutes. So that would be a pretty cool one, I think. Just like, hey, everything you want to know about this client in 20 seconds, you know.
Yeah, and what reports are you guys using or leveraging most frequently? What are you looking at a high level?
Coverage, compliance, and any endpoints that have any type of problems. Like maybe the health of the endpoint's not working really well, but mostly it's around like the enterprise level. What is my compliance rate? That is a big deal for us. And then from there, I'm looking at the ones that aren't compliant and say, okay, how do I explain these? Okay, maybe I have a good answer for those, but what are these outliers? That's kind of where the reports kind of lead me to. I can at a very high level understand how's the organization performing, right? How are we performing? Not just a particular endpoint. And I'm glad some of the dashboarding is kind of bringing that to the forefront. And before it was kind of buried in the report section, but now it's kind of bringing up before. So when a leader logs in like myself, you can say, okay, numbers are looking good. We're trending up. We're not trending down. Okay, great. I can move on to something else today.
Yeah, and I know the admins in attendance today, they like to have information that's easily presentable, readily presentable. You don't need to massage it down to the bitter end and make it presentable to your leaders. And I know you appreciate that as a leader yourself.
Yep.
Just being able to see it whenever you need to.
Yep, it's been good. It's been great.
Yeah, dashboard is just a taste. I know we're just adding some new widgets into the dashboard as we continue to improve our reporting aspects. I know I already asked for a feature that you'd like to see. Is there a specific widget, like a snapshot of your environment that you'd like to see presentable?
I do like those. The widgets you guys are bringing online. One of the things that people often forget about when they say, well, I have that data somewhere else. I'm like, yeah, that's another pane of glass you have to look at. I think one of the things people lose, at least in the security context, is like contextual awareness, right? Like when you start reporting out like the percentages of your endpoints and what they look like, and kind of the health and state of your endpoints. Having that kind of like at top of mind when you're thinking about vulnerability management, and you're still looking at that pain is really strong, because it kind of, it gives another dimension kind of to some of the decision making you're looking at. So when you start looking at trends of like, hey, my Mac OS count is going up, or hey, my Linux count is going up, it kind of turns the tables a little bit, makes people think about, okay, what's the next step here? Where are we growing? Where do we see that? So I'm excited to see more widgets come online. I know widgets are fairly new, but I do think the widgets can give a lot of meaningful insight very easily.
Yeah, just indicates what needs work. Like how can we refine our policy cadence to benefit this metric? And I agree with that. Just being able to get a quick snapshot to guide your hand in what you're working on. That's valuable in reporting. Absolutely.
Good.
It looks like, I know we have a lot of time left for questions. Feel free to pop any more in this Q&A. I know we only have one currently.
Yep.
Yep. I can just go ahead and run this off. It looks like it's from Christian. Thanks for the question, Christian. It's a pretty long one. I can read it to you, Doug, unless you have it.
No, I don't have it. I don't have it. Let's go for it.
Is your team comfortable using Automox to automatically patch production servers? We've rolled it out to our computers, and we use it to patch the servers on a manual basis so we can control the reboots and when the updates actually install.
Right. So there's a joke when it comes to production and test environments. It says everyone has a production and test environment. Some people are lucky to have those in two separate networks or two separate computers, right? So yes, we are. And the answer your question on that. And who did the question come from again?
It's from Christian.
All right, so Christian, yes, we are. So what we do there is we create a group, and we actually name that group around the patching schedules that we have for that group of servers. So we reached out to the system owners, the business owners within the organization, and the admins that support that business owner, and say, hey, maintenance is a thing. When can these servers, or when is it best for these to be cycled for patch management, right? And we target those policies, and we targeted those groups and given them names that kind of lend themselves to the patching cycle, right? So we do that on dev first. We do that in our test in our server workloads first. After it's done the next morning, we make sure the system owners test everything looks good. We approve that those patches for the next group as well, for the production group as well. So that's kind of how we're tackling it. Not all servers have development or test servers, obviously, but that's how we're taking it. Again, because Automox is more of an engine that gets the job done, the quality of those patches is really dependent on the way it's always been, whether it's Microsoft making sure their Q&A is really strong, or maybe a third party making sure their quality assurance is really strong. But as far as getting it done, we patch domain controllers, we patch database servers, you name it.
And this is a follow-up question for me. From your early on configuration, right out of the gate when we were getting you set up with onboarding, how much in your environment and policy organization have you guys changed? Like, was the setup sufficient? Were there tweaks that you needed to make? How significant were those tweaks? Was it out of the box, good to go? Or
so from a written, so are you talking about our written approved security policies? So yeah, we were able to, a couple things. Since we had a product for about a year now, we were able to tighten up our internal SLAs around vulnerability management. So in the past, we were still well within industry best practice, right? And we felt comfortable there. But because we have really powerful automation now, we can say, you know what, that X number of days for this medium vulnerability, we can do it even less. So that's something we were really, really happy about to inform our senior leadership about, and our board of directors about, is that, having, every company has customers, right? Every not-for-profit has people that rely on them. There's a level of trust that's set there, and we're able to help ensure that we're meeting that level of trust by making sure that our environment is healthy, and we're able to be more aggressive about it. Does that answer your question, Jared?
Yeah, no, thanks for coloring that a bit. Appreciate it. And I think we've got time for one more. It's just kind of a general question from the audience. If you had to give one piece of advice, or some tips to people on this call, what would it be? A security perspective, career perspective, doesn't have to be specific. I know that's kind of a broad question.
Well, let me just start with Automox, since it was topic. So Automox is, do not overthink it. So don't, one of the things that you have to be aware when you use this product is don't go in looking for complexity, because the complexity, it's a really powerful tool, but it's not complex to use. In general, I would say to anyone working in IT, or anyone working in security, always remember why you're there. Always remember why you exist. Always remember the work you do is important. There are people that depend on you each and every day to do a really, really solid job, and keep working hard.
I think that can apply to a lot of roles. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that.